soul's alive. Manifesting greatness, I'm on my grind. Unstoppable force, I'm one of a kind. Walking in my purpose, can nobody stop me. Every single step, I'm becoming who I'm meant to be. Focused on my path, I'm the one, I'm the key. Living on my dreams, yeah, I'm walking in my destiny. Walking in my purpose, can nobody stop me. Every single step, I'm becoming who I'm meant to be. Focused on my path, I'm the one, I'm the key. Living on my dreams, yeah, I'm walking in my destiny.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome back to Sisters Haven Podcast, the podcast where we celebrate the strength, the resilience, and brilliance of women from all walks of life. I am your host, Cassandra Person, and tonight I'm very excited because we have a returning guest for her second appearance. Our guest is the owner of Branch Therapeutic Solutions, PLLC. She has 12 years experience as a licensed clinic mental health counselor in North Carolina, 6 years as a professional counselor in Virginia. Altogether, she has worked 23 years in the mental health field. Please help me welcome Miss Alisa Branch as she returns to the podcast, diving deep into the topics of mental health. Welcome, Miss Alisa. How are you?
I am good. How are you? Thanks for
Outstanding. Yes, ma'am. We're so glad to have you back. Just feel like the first go round was a disservice. All of the knowledge and the wisdom and understanding that you have concerning the mental health field, I think is vitally important to the community. So I'm going to turn it right over to you and let you have free reign to share with us what it is that you think we may need to know.
Well, that's always a difficult question for a therapist because there's so many different things that we want to explain and talk to people about and tell people about.
Yes, ma'am.
I find that one of the biggest things that I tend to talk to people about, men and women, is about like emotion regulation and that being a part of like self-care. So understanding what we're feeling, what we're thinking, why we're thinking it, and where it's coming from. And so it tends to, I may see people, 8-9 people in a day, and I guarantee at least 8 to 9, 10 times in that day, we're having that conversation about emotions. And do we understand our emotions? And I find a lot of times, a lot of us are working in what we call autopilot, where we just get up and we just go and we just deal with life as it comes. But then we're unsure as to why we, physically hurt or have pains or, we struggle with stress. Everybody knows the word stress. And I always try to get my clients to kind of steer away from the word stress, but break the word stress apart and looking at it for what it is, which essentially it's anxiety. It's the overthinking about situations. It's not knowing what to do or how it's going to happen. So self-care is one of the biggest topics that I tend to talk with a lot of my clients about in any particular area, whether that's about job stress, whether that's about relationships, family issues, grief. That's a big one that it comes up with as well. And definitely in the time and space that we're in right now of so much uncertainty, as far as like the government programs and funding and just everything we hear on the news essentially, or just violence in the community. We go back to, okay, but how well are you actually taking care of yourself? How well do you know how you're doing, or are you just doing? And most of the time I feel we're all just doing. We're just going.
Yeah.
Hit a wall. And then we're, surprised that we can't handle as much as we used to. And it's like, well, we weren't really supposed to handle that much.
So, you said a lot right there. And I'm just sitting here lately, the more I dive into this, the more I'm starting to become more interested in the subject matter.
Mm-hmm.
When we look at all that we deal with just as a society,
mm-hmm.
and the weight of life. They taught us in school, ma'am, that about the curve, the up and the down. And I use that sometimes to describe how life is. And we don't get to control that.
Right.
I personally would like it to just be a straight line.
Right.
Let's just go from point A to point Z.
Yeah.
Let's just do that. But we don't get to control it. And I think sometimes we're not mentally healthy. We can't take the lows. We celebrate in the highs, but we can't operate effectively or bear up under the way we should in the low places.
Mm-hmm.
Can you talk to us about that? And what happens to that individual that's struggling with the valley experiences, the low places?
Like you said, we can't control, life and the way that life may go. We can control how we cope with it. And so in the lows, the biggest thing is that, okay, if it's a low, it's a low. That means I'm gonna have what we call healthy negative emotions. That means I'm gonna feel disappointment. Okay. I'm gonna feel concerned. I'm gonna even feel worried and feel sad. But in order for me to experience that healthy or negative emotion, that means I have a greater understanding of myself. That means I'm aware of me and not a general self-awareness. So a general self-awareness, like I kind of have an idea about myself. So I kind of know what I may struggle with, what my insecurities are, what we call negative self-talk. So basically how we talk to ourselves. So we tend to have a general idea, or I may even have an idea of some of my negative experiences and traumas and things like that. But when you have a general self-awareness, that means you don't really have a good control over how you manage your emotions, which means in how you cope when life hits that low, it's going to become a bit more of a struggle.
Okay.
That's when my stuff is going to come up. So that's when my negative self-talk, and I find out that actually, you know what, I have a whole lot of self-doubt. Or actually I learned that, you know what, I have a lot of negative self-talk about myself to my core. My self-esteem isn't as strong as what I thought it was. I may be confident in my job or being a good person or being funny, but I don't actually feel really good about me. Okay. And then I may also learn that I really don't have any stress management skills. I've been operating in autopilot, which works when life is okay. Life throws you a curveball. Life takes something away, life blows it up, life, hurts or whatever it is. When I hit that low, autopilot works until it doesn't work. And the funny thing is that autopilot will give us a telltale that is starting to not work, but we usually blow past it. So if I start to, physically hurt, mysterious pains, or I'm getting headaches, or, I'm not, most of the time we know when we're not sleeping good. That's a little indicator. Or if I could be on top of things and get things done. Now I'm kind of struggling to do it. I'm forgetful when I'm normally not. Things that I could normally handle now agitate me. I could handle the irritating person at work, but now it's like, oh my gosh, like I almost blew up and I had to control myself. So that's little telltales where autopilot, meaning we're really not checking in with our emotions and where we're at and how we're perceiving the situation, or even using any kind of stress management techniques at all. We're just moving.
Yes. So
it
reminds me. I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying life hit that low and it'll just kind of expose it, the coping strategies that we've been using. That's just really not the healthiest. They just work when life is fine and life is okay.
It is amazing to me that we actually can continue to move and go about in autopilot. And I just think one of the telltale signs too is when I leave point A and I'm driving my vehicle and I don't even remember. Making that turn. I don't remember, did I do this or do that? And you arrive at your destination, but you're on autopilot. Your mind isn't even focused on what you're actually doing. And maybe because we've been doing it, driving that route for so long, what I'm saying?
Well,
Yeah.
and that also can be what we call disassociation. And most people
Okay.
think of disassociation like, oh, I'm crazy or something's wrong with me. And that's not necessarily the case. It's like a defense mechanism that the brain will kick in on its own. So if your stress is high enough, aka if your anxiety, my anxious thoughts, my worried thoughts about what's going on, if it hits a level of intensity where the brain
Mm-hmm.
is like, this is too much. So then the brain is going to step in and protect itself and say, you know what, we're going to tap out. You're moving physically, you're physically present, but you're not emotionally and consciously present at that particular time. So a person can
Wow.
have a whole conversation. Yes, I can drive from point A to point B. Don't remember how I got there. Um, because again, if the stress is that high and I didn't really pay attention to the fact that it was that high, then yeah, the brain is going to want to protect itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Or we zone out. Some people say zone out, you know.
You all in the audience, feel free to ask questions tonight. Miss Alyssa is full of a wealth of knowledge and she's willing to respond to your questions. Yes,
Absolutely.
ma'am. You can continue, ma'am.
Um, so a part of what I, work with a lot of my clients on is getting more, I call it intentionally self-aware. So it goes from just being generally self-aware. I generally have an idea about myself to being more intentionally self-aware. So that means I know my strengths and my positives and my assets. But then
Mm-hmm.
the hard part is I then learn my baggage. It's
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
understanding and learning what my insecurities are. Whether I have an insecurity about feeling criticized or judged, or insecurity of not being enough, or insecurity of not being seen as enough. So it's understanding those insecurities so much so I know when that button is hit.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
once that button is hit, that button then dictates how I respond, how I don't respond, decisions I make, how I even perceive the whole situation. And as
Wow.
long as I don't intentionally understand that, then I can't apply any strategies that will allow me to manage that, or to kind of reassess or regroup in that moment. Because the other part of it is about being mindful, which a lot of people have heard about being mindful, which usually you hear about meditation and breathing. When you hear about it, you look up mindfulness, and that's absolutely true. The spin that I put on being mindful is like, the example I give is like, if you're not being mindful and not in tune or locked in with yourself, it's like getting dressed or trying to do something in the dark.
Mm.
Kind of sort of do it, but you won't know that, you didn't put the right colors together until you get outside and get it
Mm.
light and realize like, okay, these colors don't match. Or, I thought this was two black shoes, but one's dark brown, one's black. And so to be mindful is like turning that light switch on. So where I now know if I'm feeling stress, which is anxiety, I know where I feel it at. I feel it in my stomach, I feel
Mm-hmm.
it in my chest.
Mm-hmm.
I can feel it in the way my head hurt. And that I'm so mindful that I know that I'm starting to stress, because now I know what it feels like.
Mm-hmm.
I know my headspace. So if you say something to me and it hits me a certain way, I know me well enough to where I felt how it hit me. And I know me well enough to know, like, okay, before I respond to Cassandra, let me hold on. Let me keep listening to what she's saying first. Because that made me feel a certain type of way. And
Mm.
I don't know if that's
Okay.
my stuff that's responding to her, or if I really should respond like this to her. Let me take a second. Let me kind of listen to what's happening and then respond. And that's what's being intentionally self-aware is, and that I understand me through and through, my strengths, my positive, my assets, and all my baggage and where it came from. But I'm also mindful. That switch is on. I turn it on as soon as I wake up. So I'm not just paying
Yes.
attention to physical pains, but I'm also aware of myself emotionally, what I feel, what the actual feeling is, and what my thought process is and where it's coming from. And that's being mindful. And a lot of us are really kind of walking around just generally self aware.
Okay. So you mentioned insecurities.
Hmm.
Will we always, those of us that have them, will we always have insecurities?
Um, I think that we will probably always have the insecurity because they're usually deep rooted and been around a long time. But I
Okay.
think once we do the work, we can get to a point where that insecurity isn't in the front and it isn't the one that reacts and speaks and makes the decisions and perceives the reality for us.
Okay. All right.
You still may hit my button, but I know my button well enough to where it doesn't have the same impact as where I just kind of sort of knew I had that button.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
It is
I like to say
amazing.
we all have like
Go
little book
ahead.
bags, and that's just our baggage. Everybody got a little baggage. It just depends on how heavy it is. Some are heavier than others, but we all got a little bag. We all got a little book bag.
Wow. This is interesting what you're sharing. Because basically you're talking about triggers too. Some of us
Absolutely.
trigger we quick. I
Absolutely.
mean, quick could have just went from smiling, laughing, having a good time to all of a sudden a misunderstanding and we ready to fight. We ready to throw in the towel, ready to throw it all away behind that little moment of what? Not getting clarity, having a misunderstanding. Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
And your triggers it can be a different type of trigger because you have trigger from trauma.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be it can be a very familiar situation that can be a trigger from trauma, or it can be a familiar feeling. So a lot of times we
Okay.
think of like, trauma as like having like the flashbacks and things like that. And people absolutely have that experience. But we also can hold that familiar feeling within us too. So I can experience a certain personality that produces a very familiar feeling from my trauma. And I'm responding
Okay.
to that. But I'm also responding to the fact that my insecurity is that I may have a high sensitivity to anybody judging me or talking to me a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
Mm-hmm.
not only did I get a quick trigger from a trauma, but I also got a trigger in that, okay, you hit one of my buttons, you hit an insecurity right there. So you hit two buttons at the same time.
Wow.
And depending
Mm-hmm.
on the emotional awareness of that person will depend on how they handle that and then how they respond.
I hope you all are listening out there because sometimes we're so quick to get angry, and some people get angry and lose literally control. They just lose control.
And
Yeah.
anger is a tricky emotion in that I say that it has two jobs. It's the emotion like any other emotion, but it just gets a bad rap because of how we express it.
Mm-hmm.
Also an emotion that is the way to express multiple other emotions, multiple different emotions. So I may express anger, but behind it I may feel hurt. I may feel
Right.
shame, I may feel guilt, I may feel resentment, I may feel all of that, but my means of expressing it is my anger.
Okay.
And then my anger,
Now,
my defense as well, my protector.
I, now we're going somewhere with this. So let me throw this in here. We're going
Oh,
somewhere
wherever
with
you
this.
go.
You actually have children as clients, if
Hmm.
I understood correctly. Okay. How does an overbearing, controlling, authoritarian parent over a child, what happens to that child? I don't want to assume damage. I don't want to use that word, but
Hmm.
how does it affect that child's upbringing and into adulthood?
It could affect that child's way of it can affect like their self-esteem. And
Mm-hmm.
so if being that overbearing means that I can't mess up, and if I do mess
Right.
up, it's a heavy price to pay, and not necessarily physically. It may just be
Right.
your silence. You may not talk to me, so essentially you're withholding um, emotional connection from me. It can be how you speak to me. So it can produce self-doubt in that child now to where they second guess whether they're making the right decision. So they can become indecisive. But it also creates a certain level of anxiety as well within that child to where now I don't ever really know when it's not going to be okay.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
so in that space, they become what we call hyper vigilant.
Okay.
It's being aware at any point in time of when that negative experience is going to come. And so that you may have one child, depending on their temperament, who they may shut down.
Okay.
And so they may learn to be the overachiever. So I got to make sure I do it right and do all the right things if that gets me the positive response from that parent or parents. And then you may have a child who their shutdown is that they get angry. And so they lash out.
Mm-hmm.
And the focus becomes on them lashing out. But that child also shuts down the same way that the overachieving child will shut down. And that child will just stop caring. I don't care about the consequences. I don't care what's going to happen to me. I don't care what's going to go on. And I'm going to be angry. And my anger may also have taught me that may back you up from me. If I get angry enough, even if you're overbearing, that may back you away from me. So that's a self-defense. But now that's locked in as a kid. So now I'm labeled as like the angry, out of control kid.
Okay. I asked you that question because in a lot of instances we're seeing increased violence even in our children population.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering what is the root? Where is it coming from? But then when, the way you explained it, we don't know what a child may have experienced coming up. We don't know. And I know with my generation, we were so busy working and trying to provide and give them so much more than what we had. Yeah. And actually that the being absent from the home like that, it just had an effect on the family. So my question to you is how, if at all possible, can we start again? Can we go back and undo maybe some of the damage that was done?
In a perfect world, so I don't think we can go back. In a perfect world, I would say in a dynamic such as that, I would say it would be first that parent being willing to be that transparent
Mm-hmm.
And receptive enough to hear the impact from that child first.
Yes.
Without trying to over explain, which essentially is defend. Because now you're telling me, you wasn't present, I didn't feel loved, or you wasn't around enough. So that parent is human. They're an individual person. So the individual person is not going to want to feel criticized or judged. So they're going to want to over explain and defend why they worked and why they did this and why they did that, which is not wrong. But in what you're talking about, that parent would have to be willing to hear the piece that was missing. Yes. But then also be willing to understand why they may not have known how to do that. Because now we're talking generational.
Yes.
And so if that parent is willing to be open to learn how to do that in the way that that child needs it and receives it, then that relationship can actually grow and have a bond.
Mm-hmm.
But
I'm sorry.
Oh no, go ahead.
My oldest daughter, Sandra Edwards, my oldest daughter, wrote a book about her life. Mm-hmm. She's an adult now, loved the Lord, and she does her own podcast and all of that. But she wrote a book, and it included some stuff in there. You all go look her up and buy her book, by the way. It included some personal experiences that she wrote from her perspective.
Gotcha.
And when the book first came out, and it was concerning Cassandra, when the book first came out, I was like, how in the world you come up with this? How could you write this? Da, 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 da. And I'm so grateful that the Lord dealt with me and said, wait a minute. You can't tell her how she experienced life
Mm-hmm.
coming up.
Mm-hmm.
She has a different perspective. You understand what I'm saying?
Right.
And so I had to be able to deal with that.
Mm-hmm.
Because we might be thinking we the adult and making all the right decisions. We doing the best we can, but come on here now. Are we really doing the best that we can? And we don't realize sometimes how it affects that child. You know,
Mm-hmm.
we may be looking at, I want to keep food in your mouth and clothes on your back, roof over your head. But am I absent, too much from your life? You know, am I not taking advantage of those moments that we do have together? So I find it to be interesting because to me, small children just are so transparent and so open that if we would take the time to listen, they can give us our rating, you all as parents. They can tell us whether we're 0 or whether we're 10. They can
And
tell us.
Because a lot of the kids and teens, I mean, I enjoy working with them, and you know, a lot of people feel like, oh, you know, they're complicated, and not necessarily. They become complicated because as adults, we take on I need to teach you, I need to show you, I need to grow you, which is absolutely true. But then we underestimate that, you know, even at 5, they have their own little perspectives. Have their own little view of what's happening. They have their little feelings about stuff. Now, can they be selfish? 1,000%.
Yeah. Yes, right.
And so we only, you know, take that approach of, okay, well, I gotta tell you, and I gotta talk at you, and I gotta let you know. And then we miss opportunities, you know, to ask the question, you know, that fits their age. You know, I work with some parents and like, oh, I'm so worried. You know, I don't want them to be worried, and I don't want them to have a hard time with this. And I'll ask the parent, you know, well, have you asked them? And they'll say, well, no, I hadn't talked to him about it. And I'll say, well, you know, little Johnny is 5, but he's very articulate. He understands. He knows, you know, so ask him in a way of a 5-year-old that will understand, and he will give you the explanation of a 5-year-old. So if you're worried that he may feel this, or he may think this, or he may be like this, but you haven't gone and asked him yet. And even in older ages, even with my teens, you know, my teens, I love my teens. They're a little tricky, but I like working with them too. Same thing applies. They have their own views and their own ways of seeing things and feelings and perspectives as well. But we handle them as if they don't, because we feel like they don't have any life experience. What you know? What you depressed about? Well, yeah, they can be depressed because in their little world, you know, their little friends stopped talking to them. So that's in their world.
Yeah.
They were rejected in their little world. And our world didn't mean nothing because I got to make sure, you know, I got to get to work. I got to pay this bill. I got to do that. But in their world, that's what that is. And so we want to make them, or we want to make them feel better. You know, but don't worry about it. Like, you'll make more friends. And then all this information open to understand, well, how did it actually make you feel about yourself? Or do you know how to set boundaries? Do you know what they are? Do you know you can have a standard for friends? All of that conversation we end up not having and just leaving on the table because we either want to make you feel better and tell you it's okay, don't worry about it, it's just a friend, other things are going to come in life, all the lecture things that we do. Or I want to let you know, like, okay, it's not that deep. Like, it's really not. Like, you sad and crying and upset. Like, okay, you can make another friend in 2 weeks. And it is a way as adults, you know, to help them, but we miss all the information that we need.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. Wow. Wow. I just love what you do. I just love what you can make it so simple when life sometimes can be so complicated. You just make it so simple. If we would just slow down, take the time, and follow the roadmap, you make it so simple. Because at the end of the day, Miss Alisa, those children are going to grow up and be adults.
Right.
Now you have you have a child that was rejected, or you have a child that was left alone, didn't get the love that they need, and now they're an adult where they're stronger, they're bigger, and can do what? A whole lot more damage. When we could have dealt with it when they were children, we could have actually avoided it.
Mm-hmm.
I worked in corrections 20 years before I retired, and the prisons are full of them.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't have to be that it was always premeditated, but because Johnny never learned how to deal with his anger, or to express his anger at home was a no. You're not supposed to be angry. What you had to be angry about? You don't have to work. You don't have to,
Right.
we can go off in those tyrants. So he never learned how to control his emotions.
Mm-hmm. Or they never really learn how to deal with fear.
Yes.
You have different types. You have some that, will, get caught in the legal system because, they were fearful.
Yes, ma'am.
I really don't know how to use a gun, but I shot first because I thought you were going to shoot me. Well, that's fearful.
Mm-hmm.
And then you have some who are fearless. Now, those are tricky. When they're fearless, they have completely checked out.
Okay.
They're numb. So
yes,
they don't care about themselves, and they feel like nobody else has ever cared about them, which means they absolutely don't care about you.
Okay.
So they don't go by the same morals, so to speak, that we feel other, or have the same empathy or compassion. Like that was numbed out for them.
Okay.
So you end up seeing a different mix, of kids, that get caught, like I said, in the legal system, or even adults.
Yes, ma'am.
If they're willing to talk to you, you'll find it's a little kid in there. At some point, they checked out.
Wow. We have covered a lot of areas tonight thus far. You're doing an outstanding job.
You give me the topic, I can stay on track. But if you let me go, I'm gonna go where you go.
That's good, because I'm getting ready to go somewhere that's uncomfortable probably for the most of us. But we have to talk about
absolutely.
it, which is this. Here lately, we have children unaliving themselves. Mm-hmm. We were accustomed to adults doing it, but now we have children unaliving themselves. What are the signs? What can we do better as parents and community members? My youngest daughter went to school with a young lady in the area a few years ago, and one day the parents went off to go do what they had to do and come back, and she had committed suicide. And I remember taking my daughter to that funeral, and I was sitting there, and she was so torn, but I wanted her to have that experience, right? Yeah. I wanted it to have an effect on her, because I wanted her to see how well people speak of you when you're gone. Mike didn't have 2 minutes for you while you were here. But once you check out and you leave here, everybody has such great swelling words. People remember what you had on the last day that you got on the bus, or you were out there waiting for the bus. People remember so many details, but you're gone. And I wanted her to see that and experience it in a healthy way, but I needed it to be impactful, because I wanted her to understand whatever you're going through, that should not be your resolve of the matter. I need you to stay here, and we can weather through those issues and those problems together. Mm-hmm. So talk to us about, what are the signs? What can we do differently to maybe prevent this from happening?
The biggest thing is, I tell any parents or community or anything like that, but definitely my parents, is pay attention to your kids. Talk to them, but actually talk to them. Don't talk at them, because again, as adults, we get in the habit of we want to talk at them. So that's
Yes.
me
Yes.
telling you what to look out for, what don't worry about it. And that's me talking at you. But again, I'm leaving a lot of information on the table.
Mm-hmm.
So creating that emotionally safe space where I know if I come to you and you're my mom, I know one, you're not gonna talk at me. You're gonna let me talk to you. And you're gonna let
Yes.
me explain it to you in the way that I see it and understand it. And you're not gonna talk at me to try to make me feel better either, which that's so hard from the
Wow.
parent end, because this is your
Mhm.
child saying that I don't feel good about myself, or I don't think people like me, or I had my friends, but now they're not talking to me anymore, or maybe um, they got broken up with. And so, in that space with that parent, it's allowing them that space to feel what they're feeling and to think what they're thinking so you can hear the information you need to hear. So then that will let you know then what you need to correct and what to guide them on. But you actually got
Mm-hmm.
to talk to them, and you got to
Yes.
actually pay attention to them. So even your ones that are your quiet ones, the ones that are on point, the ones that do their work, they don't cause any problems. It can become easy to not need to check in with them because they're good, they're fine. And so
Yes.
I tell any parent that is the one that you need to check on. And not in a like a panicky kind of way. You can make it fun. You can make it a thing where, Thursday nights is just the two of us and give me the tea on everybody. Now I may get lost in the storytelling of who did this, why, and when and how. But that plugged in as the parent because now you hear about the friend group. You hear the names. You hear
Mm-hmm.
friend
Mm-hmm.
works. If it's somebody that they do like or that they like them, now we get to understand, do they know what setting the standard is? If somebody likes
Yes.
them or want to date them, or do they have a standard for friendships? When it comes to the schoolwork, are they feeling like the load is heavy? Do they
Mm-hmm.
need a different way to study? Because they can make straight A's, but that doesn't mean that they don't feel the weight of making the straight A's. So again, we don't
Right.
worry about them because they make straight A's, but we may not know that they actually stress out trying to keep everything moving and going because they know
Yes, ma'am.
they got to make good grades. Even if the requirement isn't straight A's, but they know that that household requirement is to make good grades. So it's asking them, like, how do you feel with, getting all your schoolwork done? Like, how do you make that happen? So the biggest thing that I would tell any parent or parents is actually talk to them or let them talk to you. Create
Yes,
that
ma'am.
emotional space where they have that communication where they can come and talk to you. And then have backup people.
Okay.
A lot of times my parents want to make sure they can come to me and they can talk to me, and that's great. However, if it makes them uncomfortable and they feel like I know I can talk to my mom, but I don't want her worried.
Mm-hmm.
So instead of that child sitting on that information, then have a backup person. That
Yes,
may
ma'am.
be your good friend, that may be an aunt, that may be a neighbor, that may be a cousin, and then making sure that you connected them to where now they have at least a regular check-in.
Okay.
And then of course you can kind of make it to where like, okay, now I want you to get back to where you can come and talk to me and not worry about me. And that's like a separate conversation. But the biggest thing is talking to the kids and not letting
Yes.
them know or not saying to them you is nothing you stressed about. Why are you anxious? What you anxious for? Well, I mean, if technically you're my parent and you struggling with life and your emotions are all over the place,
Mm-hmm.
be anxious. I need you to learn how to manage you.
Yes, ma'am.
You have a reason to be anxious because you as an individual person, as my parent or parents, you're struggling too. So that would be my other thing to my parents is take care of yourself too.
Yes,
I
ma'am.
tell any of my parents, any parent contact me and they want to set their child up for counseling and they talk with me about, I'm trying to do this and get this done and do that and this, and they give me a list of stressors. So the therapist in me, I'm listening. And I'm listening to, things they may want to address with the child. And the first thing I will say to, because I'm very upfront as a therapist in a therapeutic way, but what I would let them know is I think the best thing for me to start with is for me to set you up first as a parent.
Wow. Okay.
I
Okay.
can work around your schedule. We can do it virtually. You can come in. Let me start with you so I can get an idea of your concerns, your worry for them. And then from there, I can set them up at any point in time. And so I'll go and I'll set the parent up and I'll meet with my parents, because if my parents are struggling with life and then
Yes,
their
ma'am.
child is struggling with things, I can work with that kid every single day and give them every tool that I know, but I'm sending them back home to a parent that's struggling.
Mm-hmm. Yes, ma'am.
They're holding it together, but their autopilot is starting to expire and slip. So I'm sending that kid right back to you, but you struggling. So I need you to be able to take care of yourself. So then you will be in the best position that when I send that kid back to you ready to talk and express themselves, you have the capacity to do so. So
Okay.
that's the two ways that, I really kind of go at it, like I said, in working with my families and stuff.
Okay. So we've covered the community, we've covered children, we've covered adults, we've covered the prison system. The last thing that we have not talked about yet is the church.
Mm.
Do you do workshops, mental health workshops for the church? In the church?
I have not yet. I have one, it's actually in the works. Actually, I need to follow up on. But I have not personally myself yet. But I have seen where it's getting to a point where there's more conversations that's happening about mental
Mm-hmm.
health, at
Mm-hmm.
church. And some churches are more open to it than others. Um, I can't remember what program I went to, and they had a whole program around it, and they had the teens doing it. And
Yes, ma'am.
I'm trying to keep my makeup right, because the therapist was crying because you have these teens talking about anxiety and depression, and
Yes,
some
ma'am.
people, they talked about mental health. So the therapist in me is excited because you have a
Yes,
whole
ma'am.
room full of people, and everything that they talked about, I think it may have been 30 people in there. I guarantee at least 25 knew exactly what they were talking about.
Yes, ma'am.
So I'm seeing the
It,
trend now that churches are becoming a little more open to
yes,
talking
ma'am.
about mental health.
Yeah. And I think it's necessary because those issues are within individuals sitting on the pews.
It's
So
very necessary. Um,
yes, ma'am.
it hadn't always been like that. I'm old enough. I'm 46, so I'm old enough to know that that hadn't always been the case, and that it was you pray about it, you took it to Jesus, and
Mm-hmm.
tell nobody
Mm-hmm.
about it, or you when you talk to your pastor, bishop, or whatever their title credential is, and that's all you did. And it's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that, because I don't necessarily get into a lot of the spirituality with my clients, not unless that's where they need to go. And what
Yes,
I
ma'am.
do with that is about them utilizing their spirituality and or connecting with those who are their spiritual contacts,
Mm-hmm.
and utilizing their spirituality as a source of a coping skill, but
Mm-hmm.
a coping skill, not just the coping skill,
Yes, ma'am.
because
Yes,
we're
ma'am.
still human. We're still human, and so we still need to understand, what our symptoms are as far as depression, and what do we do about it. Yes, I pray about it, but I may have prayed about it and then I stayed in my dark bedroom all day.
That's
Well,
true.
those two things don't go together. I need to pray about it, and then I need to at least change out of my clothes, and then at least go to my couch and open my blinds. So
Mm-hmm.
both of those things would need to happen. Or I can pray about it, but I have panic attacks. So I'm gonna pray about it, but I actually need to know deep breathing exercises to calm this adrenaline down in my body and pray
Yes,
at the
ma'am.
same time. So the two can go together.
And then sometimes it's difficult to bring a matter, a personal matter, even to your leader because of the family unit in the church and the close knitness in the church. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And so you don't want everybody to know. Not saying that the leader would reveal it. It's just that sometimes the issues end up becoming public knowledge anyway, because the two parties may be in the same
Mm-hmm.
church. You know what I'm saying? In same church attendance. So I found out that when some years ago that some things too you're not going to get from sitting in Bible study. There's you can't go but so deep because of that
Mm-hmm.
because of the fact of who's in the audience. You know, women have issues, men have issues, you know, leaders have issues.
Right.
Everybody has issues. So you do need that private setting and someone that you really can be transparent with, someone that also too will not judge you for what it is that you're dealing with.
Right.
Mhm.
I think both things can absolutely, be true. Whatever a person's um, religious belief is, that it absolutely can
Yes,
be a
ma'am.
source of strength for them, a source of coping for them. And even in a Bible study, it's making sure that whoever's leading that Bible study, if you're going that deep, you know how to do that.
That's yeah, yeah,
You
yeah.
know, that you can't just open that and then we just gonna wrap it up and pray. Well, they're gonna have triggers
Mhm.
for the rest of the night. Like, we need to close this out. Like, do you know how to close that out? So it
Wow.
kind of comes with a bit of, again, a little training. In a perfect world, it would be your leaders would get some of the basic mental health training because
Yes,
most
ma'am.
end up kind of knowing it anyway, just from experience, just dealing with people and talking with people and things they've dealt with in their own lives, that a lot of your leaders have somewhat of an idea as far as mental health.
Hmm.
But yeah, in my fantasy world, it would be just a little short little blurb training that if you have that Bible study where it's open and it's comfortable and it's not going anywhere, it's that tight knit, then you can hit those subjects and then
Yeah.
people feel comfortable and your leader feels comfortable to have a discussion about, depression, or have a discussion about self-esteem and self-worth. And you can quote
Hmm.
scripture to go with it, but we can actually talk about, not feeling worthy, or toxic relationships and things like that. So yeah, in my perfect world, it would be a short little basic overview of mental health. And what
Well,
that means symptoms, that means diagnosing, that means understanding people who struggle with day-to-day issues, and also people who struggle with larger issues and even more serious mental health issues. So I
yeah.
think sometimes that kind of pops up in the church as well, in that if you have someone that's struggling with psychosis, so that's hearing things,
Hmm.
seeing things, that's believing things that's
Hmm.
not really true, you can talk to me about it being the devil 1,000%. You can't.
I'm not laughing at
No, but
the, the
I
the individual. I just could see. I just had a picture. Go
right.
ahead. Go ahead.
But you need to have a true understanding of what this person is experiencing too, as
Yeah.
you may be talking with them about, you know, um, a demonic spirit on them, or however it is that you bring the spirituality to it, but you still need to have somewhat of an understanding of what psychosis is,
Yes, ma'am.
what it
Yes.
looks like, and what that person may actually be feeling and experiencing, in that moment. So then, yeah, you're able to help them as best they can, and then yeah, of course, refer them out, to somebody
Yes,
in
ma'am.
the community.
Well, we there's just a need in the church. That's all. It's just a
It
need.
really is. I mean,
Yes.
'cause everybody's there. That's where
Yes.
we go for referee for to be rejuvenated and refreshed. So absolutely,
Mhm.
why not?
Yes, ma'am. All right. You all that are still watching us, continuing to watch us. Anybody have any questions for tonight? before we close out, you have just done such a dynamic job. I'm feeling that they might not have any questions because we kind of covered a whole lot.
We absolutely hit a
I tell you, I could bring you back every week. I just enjoy you, learn so much from you.
I appreciate it. I thank you for having me
And
on.
thank you. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for all that you do. Thank you for the lives that are being saved um, through your place of business. It's saving lives. It's saving lives. So thank you for that.
I
Yes,
appreciate it.
ma'am. Will you please give them your information in case they want to reach out to you?
Absolutely. My practice name is Branch Therapeutic Solutions. My number is 336-338-9519. If you call me, please leave me a voicemail. It is a work sale. It is a personal work sale. So if you want to text me after you leave a voicemail, that's completely okay. A lot of times during the day, in between appointments, I can text you back and let you know, like, are you free at 2? Talk with you if you have any questions. Just give me a call. My email is abranch@branchtherapeutic.com. So again, if it's just to ask a question, to get resources, please feel free to reach out and let me know.
Okay, Miss Alisa, thank you again. I appreciate it.
Um,
And you enjoy your night. Get some rest. I'm going to try to do the same and looking forward to tomorrow.
all
Good
right.
night, everybody. Thank you all for joining us. Thank you for your support and looking forward to meeting with you all again next week. Good night, everyone.
Have a good night.